Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas W1DED. I'm back with the contest crew, Dan N6MJ, Chris KL9A, Randy K5ZD, and Bill W9KKN. We're just a week and a half past the CQ WPX single sideband contest, and I'm looking forward to understanding what happened at ND7K and K3LR. Randy, let's start with you with K3LR. Huge score, 58 million points, I think, something like that?
Something like that. Our goal going in, Tim's goal going in was let's beat the NQ4I record from, I think it was 2014. We passed that at hour number 25, so we were feeling pretty good. And the way the WPX scores work, the longer you go, the more people you work, the more multipliers you have. So you get this geometric progression of the score. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So at the end, we're making 1 million points an hour or more. So that kept everybody engaged. And Tim has a fabulous station, and he had a really good operating crew. So we had somebody pounding away on 40 all day, and N2NT and K5TR were CQing for anybody anywhere on 20 meters. So the team definitely put in the effort to eke every QSO we could find.
And Dan, since you led the effort at ND7K, tell us about that.
Yeah, we were pretty happy with the way things turned out. We knew going in that actually beating K3LR was not really something that was going to happen. Biggest reason for that is the 6-point Qs on 40 and 80 that they can get that we just don't have access to. We had set a internal goal of trying to beat them in overall Qs. That was kind of our goal going in, as well as beating our previous record from that station, which was around 30 million. So we ended up not beating them in Qs, but we certainly tried really, really hard. We also had an all-star team on all bands, really. And so, we ended up beating the NQ4I record as well. We ended up with around 33 million. And I think the last time we did this contest as a multi-multi from ND7K, which was in 2023, we had about 30 million. So we upped it by 10%, and we were actually very, very happy with how things turned out.
So I'm always curious what went wrong, but before we get into what went wrong, what went right for both of you?
I'll start. I think one of the things that we do really well at ND7K is we tie the contest not just to operating, but also it becomes an event. Some people that were there described it as like a mini-Dayton. We had 18 people that made Qs on the radio over the weekend. And a lot of us haven't seen each other in quite a while. So it wasn't just about the operating, it was about the overall event. And we have that part down pretty well. So I think that was a huge success. I'm going to let Bill talk a little bit about 10 meters, because that's something that's been frustrating us at ND7K for quite some time. It was not an operator issue. It was something going on station-wise that was kind of frustrating. But Bill, since you were on 10, why don't you talk about 10 meters a little bit and what the problem was?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'll say one other thing is that Tim's station in Arizona is not necessarily designed to be a multi-multi. It's more of a multi-2 or a multi-1 station. So when we come to do that, we have to arrange antennas and amplifiers and radios and just fit everything in the room. And I actually got there Tuesday of that week to start sorting a lot of that out. And I'm pleased to say that everything that we tried to do worked. Like, we didn't have any major failures throughout the contest. I was a little nervous just because I did a few new things in the station that hadn't previously been done. But I was really happy about that aspect of it. But 10 meters. So the saga of 10 meters. So for the last time we did this was in 2023, and we heard this other very loud station in Arizona, Kilo Whiskey 7 Mike Mike, and we sort of read about what this guy's done over the last couple of years. He goes to a state park with a van and a couple of 4-element Yagis, and he absolutely kicks all of our butts on 10 meters. He had more QSOs than K3LR had on 10 meters. And certainly more than we did. He's in Sedona, and he's not that far down the road. He's up on a hill, but it's not even that big of a hill. So, what last time this happened in 2023, we really, like how does a guy with a van and a couple of Yagis beat us with, how many elements do we have on 10 meters? I mean, just a ton, right? We have a ton of antennas, we have a ton of selection, we have a ton, we put some real firepower behind the operating this year. We really thought through the strategy. We really, did a lot of analysis of the logs as, previous efforts, and we still came up short. We're still kind of scratching our head like, how did this guy do so well? I don't think anything nefarious is going on or anything like that. Our latest theory is just that we have too many antenna selections, and maybe we're spreading the beam too far out, and whatever the reason might be. But I mean, we would tune into this guy's frequency, listen to him for a while, and he'd be working guys we can't hear at a very consistent pace. And he sounds great on the air. And it's not that we had a bad team. We had myself, K7ZO, and Kilo Mike 3 Tango, and a few others joined in. And there was a lot of time just CQing into nothing essentially. And I mean, the only direction I really felt particularly loud was toward JA, and toward Europe. I mean, Saturday was okay. Sunday was a disaster. I mean, the band didn't even open for us until very, very late. I want to say like almost 20 Zulu, 21 Zulu before I was really even getting any regular pace. So yeah, we'll have to look into that, and it's one of these things where you can do all the analysis in the world, and maybe you just got out operated. I don't know what to say.
I will say this: KW7MM was consistently very loud, consistently louder than you guys. That's every time I tune across him, he was loud. He was always on the same frequency, which meant he was maintaining rate. So. Sometimes locations, it doesn't take a lot to make a big difference. And you're right, if there's other antennas around, no telling what kind of unknown interference patterns are being created. But he was consistently there all the time.
And the other big thing, too, that we know for sure is that the antennas at ND7K are really too big in a lot of the cases. Like our W1 stack is an 8/8 at 30 and 60 feet. We put up a new antenna this year for W4 at 30 feet, but it was a 6 element. And Scott, K7ZO, is a master at looking at data, and he's come across some data that I found very interesting. And I think what we're doing, in my theory, everyone's got a new theory on this, which is kind of fun. We've exchanged so many emails after the contest, just about 10 meters. But my theory is that our beam are so narrow that we're loud in certain geographic areas, but we're not loud in a lot of geographic areas, and that's kind of where we're struggling. So I think we're finding here at the top of the cycle that smaller antennas on 10 meters are better, and we have the opposite of that. So
it's interesting that you reach that conclusion, because you sit down at K3LR and you have 4 8-element big monoband Yagis for 10 meters on the run station. And then, oh, by the way, on the in-band station, they also have 4 8-element full-size Yagi. So it's pretty incredible. The big thing for us, what made this weekend kind of strange, was Saturday, 10 meters just barely opened. The guys in 15 were going to town, and we're just getting further behind on 10. We just couldn't, the opening just wasn't deep, and it wasn't far-reaching. We didn't work any Gs hardly. There's some line through the middle of Europe, and if you were north of that, it just did not exist. And then Sunday we had a more normal band opening, where before the sun came up, the band was open. We're working lots of guys from top to bottom of Europe and deep into Russia and that kind of thing, and that really helped. I think if we'd had 2 days of that, all the scores would have been bigger, of course, but it just would have. In a way, that's where those really big antennas helped us. It was on Saturday. And then when the band really opened on Sunday, it was just amazing to be on a clear frequency and just have one German after another call in. And what was interesting is on 15, the guys were way ahead of us on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we're just about doubling their rate every hour. So it does show there is a finite number of people that you can work in the contest, and as you start to reach that point, you kind of run out of people to work if you weren't on the band with it being good to every area all the time. So it's a little bit of luck of the draw. But anyway, it worked out. It just, you were asking Kevin what went right. I think Tim, it really is like sitting down in a Formula One car when you operate from there. I mean, everything is tweaked out, maximum everything. All the antennas are perfectly aligned, and he's taken every little thing and that he can do to extract another tenth or a half of a tenth of dB out of the antennas in the station. I think we had one failure. One of the radios broke on 40 meters in the middle of the night. But for the most part, you just sit down and you work, guys. All those 10-meter beams that actually all the Yagis on the high bands are on ring rotors. I've never seen so many ring rotors, but that means every antenna can be turned in any direction. He has a fantastic button switching system where you just push the button combination for what antennas you want. And in a way, N5TJ and I were kind of laughing because we've got all these antennas, we can point them anywhere we want, and we both are used to being in stations where there's always a button that you push to go south. And in this place, because any antenna could be anywhere, I was always having to think, okay, which antenna do we have that's pointing south now? Which is, a first world problem. But in terms of, making things right, I'll give you just a small example, but it shows you something about Tim's attention to detail. Every operator who shows up there gets a coffee cup with their call sign and their name on it. Actually get two of them. One to use, and you can take it home, and then one that remains on the wall. It's kind of this record of all the people who've operated there. But there were more than once during the weekend where I'm like, okay, which one was I drinking out of? Which of these cups that I see in front of me are next to the station? Which one's mine? Which one's the other guy's? And when you realize it's like, oh, everybody has a cup with their name on it, it just eliminates all this uncertainty and questioning about what's going on. But I thought it was a great example of just a very simple thing that he does. It just makes everybody included in the team, but also solves a very practical problem that you have in a multi-op.
So, Chris, I want to pull you into the conversation. What's your take?
Yeah, I like listening to this. This is fun for me too. So, I've been to K3LRs like 25 times or something. So, the attention to detail there is literally second to none. The experience at ND7K was a little different. Bill got there on Tuesday. Levi got there, I think, on Saturday night or Sunday. And Dan got there on Wednesday night. I got there just before he did. And it was kind of 15 guys flew in and invaded Tim and Tina's house. And the station was set up for Dan's single ops, and Bill was going multi-multi. And we had to rewire for extra amplifiers on the shack because there wasn't enough 240 outlets for that. I walked into the shack on Wednesday and I was like, oh my God, we're doing a contest. This place is a disaster. And it was like the worst, like my skin crawls just thinking about what it looked like because guys were in there working and they're just throwing stuff everywhere. And it was kind of like, okay, Bill's got to do his thing and get the station ready. Everyone else will take care of all the stuff. So I was kind of the entertainment director / 15-meter guy. So Dan was in charge of all the operating and everything else. Bill was in charge of the tech. Levi was like doing antenna work and all this stuff. So it was a lot of work to get 15 guys that flew in and drove over and all that stuff. But one time on Sunday, we're cooking this big meal and we had about an hour break, Tim's wife and I. And it was like, well, we got an hour before we got to do the next step. So we got in the pool, we got in the hot tub. And after that hour, it was like, all right, well, back to work. And, the stuff like that is kind of cool. I always talk about the people and the multi-ops. And this contest is definitely about the people. I mean, K3LR had an all-star team. We had the other half of the all-star team. And, hanging out with these guys, it really is a privilege, not to get all sappy, but I mean, we had K1AR on 20 meters. We had KM3T over on 10, have N6MJ. Well, these guys, it's just like super cool to hang out with. And, that's the best part is hanging out, but it's a lot of work. Kudos to all these multi-op owners that do it year after year. It's a lot of work.
In that same vein, and we often talk, about figure out who your competitor is, or at least have some kind of competition going on. Dan set up a WhatsApp group for all the operators in both teams. So during the whole contest, there's always this banter going on between the stations. And that also kind of, to me, made everything a lot more fun, just to kind of be able to exchange experiences, what's going on, pictures, bad jokes, whatever. But it did expose one tremendous difference between the LR and the ND7K operation, which was in the food department. As you would expect, a guy who runs a grocery store is pretty good at sourcing food, but it turns out he's also a very good cook. So, Chris, we just kept getting one report after another of some incredible piece of meat that was being barbecued, smoked. I don't know what all the choices were, but definitely made us jealous in that regard.
Yeah, and there was 2 chats, just to be clear. There was one with us and you guys, and then an internal one. They were and very different. And the Gab. But yeah, we can't beat you on cues. We gotta, beat you with something. But Tim, K3LR was great about sending photos of your guys' food and what was going on. That was cool because you don't get to see that a lot. The inner workings of another multi. I thought it was super cool. More guys should do that.
Instead of coffee cups, we got whiskey glasses with our call signs on it.
That's right.
The difference is, that is the difference.
So now that you've done a multi-multi from ND7K, will there be another?
That's a good question, and that's not something.
Don't ask questions like that so soon.
Yeah, geez. No pressure, Tim. Jeez.
We will definitely continue on with more multi-ops, whether it be multi-multi or smaller, we'll have to see. But the experience is amazing. That's what's going to bring us back. But like Chris was saying, there's so much work with getting that multi-multi ready, and the station is just not designed for it. So we'll see. It's fun, so maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah, 2 hours after the phone contest, Tim's like, "Hey, you're going to come back for WPX CW?" And I'm like, "Dude, too soon."
Too soon, man.
let me process this one out first.
So Kevin, we were watching the scoreboard the whole time. One, to see our butts getting kicked by K3LR, but we like to see how the other guys are doing, and it was cool to see the multi-single races, and there was a couple of categories where the world records were broken. I think CR3DX got close. These guys, CN3A had a huge score, didn't quite get the record. CQ9A, I think, broke the record. But it's cool watching that. But we were also, of course, watching you at VP5E. Tell us about your experience there, because, man, you had a crap load of cues.
It was a blast. I said before we started, I unfortunately only listened to half of your advice and didn't listen to the other half, and I wish I had paid attention to all of it. But I did so much better than I thought I would. And I think if I had more confidence going into it, knowing that I might end up at 12 million, I could have pushed it harder for 13 or maybe 13.5 million, because I know I left a lot on the table. I think, I was watching the contest online scoreboard just in my category, and right out of the gate, well, let me back up. I think I've mentioned to you guys, starting a contest has always been tough for me. Every time, that first 2 or 3 hours is really difficult. And the first 4 hours, I was keeping pace with Bud Trench at V26K. And that gave me a ton of confidence that I was right with him. I think we had almost the same QSO rate, 4 hours in. So once I saw that, I thought, okay, something's clicking here. Something is working. And it was fine until I moved to 40 meters. And then I just hit a wall. I couldn't find a frequency. I couldn't hold on to a frequency. And it just wore me out. And I ended up not following the band plan that I had. I had done a lot of work. Dan, you actually reviewed the spreadsheets that I had. I'd looked at WP4X's winning year and 8 Papa 5 Alpha's year. And I really wanted to be operating until I think my plan was to operate until 0400, and I didn't make it. I think I made it to 0300, and I said, okay, I can't keep it up. I'll get some rest and start up in the morning. I didn't maximize the 40 meters. But then Saturday was just awesome. I mean, I can't tell you how happy I was. Like once I started on 10 meters, I was there for 6 hours running the entire time, and then moved to 15 meters and ran 6.5 hours. And it was just 12 hours straight of nonstop runs, which was great. And then I hit 40 meters again, and again ran into the same sort of headache and quit early. I was chasing people. I mean, at some point, V26K just took off with multipliers, and I knew I was going to not keep up with him. It wasn't my plan to, but there was a guy from Hawaii, KH6ZB, who I'd actually operated with down in St. Lucia, and I was chasing him, and I was chasing FM5BH and somebody else, and that really helped to help motivate me to try to catch up with these guys, and I end up surpassing a couple of them. FM5BH I just couldn't keep up with, but yeah, it was just a blast. I want to do it again and not make the mistakes that I knew that I made.
So the biggest thing after the contest is, now that you've done one and you've entered the realm of serious single ops, post contest you have to get all your excuses lined out. So you didn't do well on 40, obviously because you didn't have a 3-element Yagi. That was the problem.
That's the one.
So had you had that, you would have been much better. You gotta. It's a skill in itself of having your excuses after the fact. So just keep working on that, Kevin.
This is the first I've heard that, so I wasn't prepared. Although I did feel good about the fact that I did this with 400 watts and a SteppIR, and that's all I had, and no rotor. And with the raw scores, I'm number 6 North America right now in the high power category. So I can't not feel good about that. Again, what I feel badly about is if I'd figured out 40 meters, and when I say figured out, if I just hung in there, I could have done better. And then on Sunday, I just was not mentally as sharp as I wish that I had been. The other thing that, and I'm curious what your take is on this. I know going into this, the advice that I got from you guys was the multipliers will come to you. Well, they didn't, to the extent that everybody else was getting the multipliers. And that could have been because I was unassisted, because I wanted to do the classic. But I really fell down on the multiplier category. Should I have gone assisted? Was there something else I could do, or was it just a matter of 400 watts?
Well, how far down are you on mults?
I think that's a good question. I think it was maybe a couple hundred.
It's hard to say. I mean, there's no question using assistance might have helped a little bit. Might have helped you when you hit that 40-meter wall to at least give you some people to go shoot at. I'm a little surprised. You said you were done. You didn't make it to 0400 the first night. Was 20 not open? Did 20 go away?
And I wasn't on 40, but I mean, 40 phone can just be exhausting. And not only do you get to work all the guys, you get to work all the thunderstorms too. And I don't know how bad was the QRN, and how, like, was it just fatiguing to operate, or what sort of things were you running into?
Couldn't find a frequency, and every time I did, I'd kind of get squeezed out, and then I couldn't hear people. And that was, I was also listening to what you guys were saying. Make sure you copy things properly. And to answer your question, Randy, I did drop down to 20, just closing out that night for about 45 minutes. So I closed out Friday night on 20.
So when you say you were looking for a frequency or having trouble finding one, where on 40 were you trying to squeeze in?
Just below 7,200.
Yeah.
Roughly. But I was looking everywhere.
Yeah. From North America, especially the first night in a contest like this, just go above 7,200 and run W's all night. Because it's easier to find a frequency, and it's just, or go below 7,100 and try to work Europeans. But the sweet spot for Europe actually happens at their sunrise. So you actually do you could have taken a couple hours off easily and come back like 05 and maybe had a little bit of a time period. But that, I'm sure if we autopsy it, that will be the delta between you and the other North American guys that are above you, will be points on the low bands. It's hard to give up all those double points.
Yeah, the thing to remember too, running only 400 watts on 40 is a bit of an issue. So that puts you a little bit weaker than everyone on the band. I was on 40 meters the whole contest from ND7K, and it was extremely difficult, especially Saturday night. There was tons of thunderstorms out in the center of the country, and we had several beverages, and without those, we would not have worked half the guys that we ended up working. The beverages worked great, And if you didn't have that at your disposal, that was another thing that's going to slow you down a little bit, especially on 40. I imagine where you were in VP5, you might have heard some of that noise too. Did it sound noisier on one night versus the other, or was it just always noisy? That's also a possibility.
My recollection was the same both nights, and it really was the noise I'm really referring to were just other operators that were squeezing me out. That I found that really tough when they squeezed in a little bit closer, and then I couldn't make out the other caller to the degree that I needed to. And I think part of it was just fatigue. I was just tired and kind of feeling beat up.
Yeah,
Is that a good excuse, Chris?
Extremely hard.
You're getting better at that.
Yeah, you're making good headway. The other thing is you had a single element vertical, right? Just a quarter wave vertical.
No, it was a SteppIR that went from 10 to 40. So it's basically a dipole on a SteppIR.
Gotcha. Okay. So, on 40, you got to be commanding. Yeah, those are pretty comparable. And 400 watts to a dipole at whatever, 50 feet. That's not a commanding signal anywhere, right? And I was looking at your score on 3830. I think your multiplier total is exactly in line with the other guys. AA3B or V226K, he certainly ran 2 radios, was picking off spots. But his QSO total was higher, and he's not that much higher in mults. The other guys, the UN9L was really close to you. The European guys were right there with you on mult, similar Qs. So I think your mult strategy was fine, just running guys. I don't think you missed anything, really.
It's proportional.
Well, I also know that I could have done better on Sunday. I really wasn't as focused on Sunday as I should have been. And then also on Sunday, I was intentionally QRM'd twice. Somebody was playing back a recording of me making contacts. And the first
that was
time
Bill playing with his AI.
I figured it was Bill. It was either him or Levi. I just knew it.
Just done. Yeah.
Well, the first time it happened, I just worked through it. I just ignored him and worked through it. And then it happened again near the end of the contest. I think I had this great frequency low on 10 meters, which I was kind of surprised to get. And you guys have, I think, Randy, you've mentioned this before, that the best pileup are the ones where they come one by one. And that's exactly what was happening. It was perfect. And then this guy just starts QRMing me, and I ended up shutting down the rig at 23:15 because I should have pushed through it. But
They do put a knob on the radio that specifically can be used for this situation. You can go to another frequency. You can go to another band.
Yeah, it's the big one.
Well, and I'm admitting, and this isn't an excuse, Chris. This is I know mentally I didn't stay in the game as well as I could have on Sunday for sure, and it burned me when I realized, okay, I got 12 million. If I just hung in there, what else could I have done?
By the way, from the outside, you sounded great every time I tuned across you on Saturday and Sunday. You sounded fine. You sounded a little more tired on Sunday. You weren't talking quite as fast. But, it didn't sound like you were struggling with anything. You were coming back to guys, and you sounded relatively efficient. So what you're running, I know I did a couple of single ops where I recorded the whole thing. And when you play an hour on Saturday and then immediately right after play an hour on Sunday, it's like, why is this guy such a lid? You just aren't as sharp on the second day. But that's, again, with experience, you start to realize that. And also experience means more practice. So you're not having to spend so much mental energy just to get guys in the log. So you will get better at that part of it.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to get whacked on log checking also. I was very cognizant from the beginning of trying to copy as accurately as possible. But there were times where I just couldn't make it out. And, I was doing the best I could to put something in the log. And I don't know what you guys do in those cases, but, I've had already invested, it seemed like, too much time, and I just need to move on. And that happened a few times on Sunday, several times on Sunday.
That happens, yeah.
You have to make a decision when you decide to move on. Are you going to take the risk that the guy, that you have it right or you don't? I mean, if you don't think you have it right, then move on. Tell the guy, come back later and move on.
You're seeing, I always keep saying that single op is awful, and it's like the worst category on the planet. So you can see how the mental game is so important, especially for a 48 hours, right? It's brutal. And, you operated 36 hours. You got to sleep a little bit. These guys that go 48 hours, especially on phone, that's just, I don't know why someone would want to do that, but.
So I just want to bring you back to the two key pieces of advice that I gave you, Kevin. So one was, don't go into this thinking you're going to win, because you weren't going to. And the second thing is learn from this contest, because if you're going to do it again, you got to be able to learn from what you did this time, and the next time you get better, and then you learn again and get better and get better. So I think this contest for you was an overall absolute success. I think coming in 6th place is outstanding. And I think that just this conversation here tonight, speaking about things that you learned, is exactly what we were hoping that you would do. So I just wanted to give you kudos on that.
Well, thank you for that.
Well, and write it all down, because you're not going to remember next year unless you do.
Great.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. My name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I'm with the contest crew. We'll see you next time.